Hi, I'm Maribel, and this is the story of how my mother left me nothing, but gave me everything. While my sister stood in a gold-lit gala celebrating her $700 million inheritance, I was holding Mom's hand as she took her last breath. They gave me no letter, no explanation, just an old flip phone. But that phone didn't hold, it held her voice, and her voice changed everything. Before we go any further, tell me, have you ever felt like the one they wanted to forget? If yes, comment number 1. If no, comment number 0. This isn't just about money. It's about memory and the kind of truth that refuses to stay buried. Let me tell you my story. While Sienna raised her glass in a gold-lit gala to celebrate her $700 million inheritance, I was holding our mother's hand as she took her last breath. Mom's skin was still warm, her breath thin as paper. I sat by her bedside at Elm Grove Hospice, a white cloth in one hand, my other curled gently around hers. Through the open window, the spring air moved slowly, like even the wind was trying to be respectful. The nurse had offered to close it, but I told her to leave it open. Mom always liked the way honeysuckle smelled at dusk. The invitation to the gala lay crumpled at the bottom of my purse, embossed, gold-edged, cold. It had arrived the same week Mom stopped remembering what year it was. Sienna didn't cancel it, of course. She called it a celebration of legacy, but the word mother never appeared anywhere on the card. The nurse came in and placed a quiet hand on my shoulder. "There's still time," she said, "if you want to go." I didn't answer. I just looked at Mom's face, so still, so quiet, and thought about the last time I saw Sienna. She hadn't looked me in the eye, said I complicated things. I don't know what got into me. Maybe it was the guilt, or the silence, or just the unbearable sense that no one would say her name out loud unless I did. So I drove to Evervale Estate. The parking lot shimmered with black cars and champagne laughter. People in gowns and tuxedos floated through the archways like they'd always belonged there. I didn't. Before I even reached the main entrance, Sienna appeared, flawless as ever. "You shouldn't be here," she said without even blinking. "Not tonight. I just want to say something." For Mom, she smiled, the way a shark might. "Mom left you the only thing you ever deserved, silence." Security moved fast. I didn't fight. I just let them walk me past tables of people who looked right through me. Some squinted, like they vaguely remembered my face from some story they never finished reading. When I got back to the hospice, the nurse met me at the door. "She waited," she said gently, and then held out a small white box. "She asked me to give this to you if anything changed." Inside was an old flip phone, scuffed, heavy, closed. The phone was old. Rubber keys, scratched screen, probably dead for years. And yet, it chimed. I nearly dropped my cup when it happened. It was early morning, the apartment still hushed, save for the ticking clock above the stove. I'd made a pot of chamomile tea just to fill the space with something warm. The phone, plugged in with an old charger I found buried in the junk drawer, had been dark for hours. Then, ding, like it had just woken from a decade-long nap. The screen blinked to life, stuttering once before revealing a folder named Only Daughter. My heart tapped a little harder. I tried opening it. A password screen appeared. I tapped in Mom's birthday, then mine, our address. Nothing worked. For some reason, I typed in dandelion, Mom's favorite flower. Still wrong. And then it happened. The screen went black again. Then a faint hiss cracked through the speaker. Her voice followed, breathy, weak. "Don't let them sign. It's not final, not yet." The recording ended. The file disappeared, just like that. I sat still for what felt like a full hour, the phone warm in my hand, my tea forgotten and cold. By afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Two men in charcoal suits stood outside, holding boxes of croissants like shields. "We're from Belmont and Hartley," one said, smiling too politely, "representing your sister." We sat at my small kitchen table. They laid out paperwork, glossed over legal jargon. It was all very cordial. "This simply formalizes your understanding of the estate," the broader one said, "given that the will is clear." "I haven't read the will," I replied. "But the terms are final," the thinner one assured. "This is just closure." I didn't sign. They didn't push. That evening, Sienna called. "There's nothing in that phone," she said, her voice silk over a razor. "Nothing worth ruining what's left of this family." But I knew better. As I sat on the couch, phone still plugged in, the screen blinked again. Clause 17, C. Location unlocked. Coordinates appear on screen. An address. Old Garden Bank. I didn't know what Clause 17C meant, but my mother's voice had never sounded so certain. The coordinates led me to Old Garden Bank, tucked quietly on a side street I hadn't been to since high school. The lobby was all marble and soft lighting, with tellers in navy vests that looked more ceremonial than functional. When I handed over my ID and the printed code from the phone, the woman behind the counter looked at me like I'd just opened a sealed vault from the past. She disappeared for 10 minutes. Then, I was led into a small private room. No windows, just a table, a chair, and a small metal box placed gently in front of me. Inside, wrapped in lavender cloth that still carried a faint scent of Mom's perfume, was a flash drive. Beneath it, an envelope. My name is written in her unmistakable, shaky handwriting. I sat there for a long while before opening it. "Marybelle," the letter began, "I should have spoken louder." This was the only way I could leave something true. I cried, but quietly. The kind of cry you don't even notice at first until your collar's damp. Before dying, people often think of the best things they can do for those left behind, like my mother is doing for me. Maybe she had to think a lot to do something for me. I love my mother so much. If you sympathize with me, please leave a comment number 9 in the comment section below. Now, let's get to the next development of this story. When I got home, I plugged the flash drive into my old laptop. A folder blinked open immediately, scanned legal documents, handwritten notes, and at the center of it, a revised will. Dated 1 month after the one Sienna had presented. Highlighted in yellow, Clause 17C. If Marybelle Quinn is excluded from all public acknowledgement or estate discussion, this clause restores her position as co-beneficiary. At the bottom, 2 signatures, Mom's, and another I recognized right away, curling like a vine, Uncle Wallace. I drove to his cottage that afternoon. It smelled like old paper and menthol balm. He looked thinner, older than I remembered. At first, he barely met my eyes. "I found the will," I said, laying the document on his cluttered table. "That's your signature." He sighed deeply. "She asked me to witness it," he said. "She wanted a backup, something they couldn't touch." "And you let them bury it?" His shoulders sagged. "I'll testify, just not publicly. My wife's sick. Please protect her." I nodded once. That night, I found an envelope under my door. Cease and desist. Quinn versus Quinn Estate. I didn't need a microphone or a podium. I had a flash drive, and I had her voice. I called Frances Liu, the way you reach out to someone you're not sure still remembers you, but hope does. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was calm, clipped, and familiar in a way that made my throat tighten. I told her I had something that once belonged to my mother. and that it wasn't meant to be hidden. We met at the Candlelight Cafe, tucked between a used bookstore and a knitting shop downtown. The place smelled like cinnamon and paper. Frances still carried a fountain pen and the same calm energy she had back when she was a reporter. She ordered Earl Grey. The cafe owner brought me chamomile, Mom's usual. I hadn't asked. I took a breath and slid the flash drive across the table. Then I played the voice clip, Mom's voice, soft but steady. "If they make me sign, it's not final." "Not really." Frances didn't speak for a long while. "Clause 17C, I said quietly, showing her the document. She tried to leave me something. They buried it. Frances leaned back, fingers steepled. "Are you ready for this to go public?" "I'm tired of being erased." That night, we uploaded everything to a private folder. Voice clips, legal files, Mom's handwriting. Names redacted, except one, Sienna. Frances wrote the post, clear, unemotional, devastating. She published it at midnight. By morning, the link had already hit a few inheritance law forums. By lunch, it spread to local Facebook groups. That night, I refreshed my inbox. 76 messages. A few warm. A few are cruel. One from someone claiming to know more. At 2 a.m., Frances called. "It's spreading faster than we expected," she said, "and someone's already trying to scrub it." As I got ready the next morning, I spotted someone across the street, Leon. He didn't come in. Just nodded once, like a quiet vote of confidence, then walked away. The next morning, I opened my work email. Administrative leave, pending review. I didn't know what losing a job felt like, but I was pretty sure it started with silence. I sat across from my manager, who avoided eye contact by way of the framed certificates behind me. She cleared her throat twice. "We've received inquiries," she said, drawing out each word like a fragile thread. "Due to external concerns, we're asking you to take some time away from the office." I nodded. No questions, no fight, just quiet. That seemed to make her more uncomfortable than any outburst might have. When I got home, my inbox was worse. Articles, anonymous blogs, a new one titled "The Forgotten Sister with a Dangerous Imagination." They used a photo from Mom's funeral, my face blotchy and tired, caught mid-blink. I looked unwell. That was the point. I almost deleted everything. But then a knock came, soft, familiar. It was Wallace. He stepped in with slow feet and heavier eyes. I hadn't seen him since the day I showed him the will. "I wasn't going to say anything," he said, handing me a manila envelope. "But I found this in Elaine's old files. She mailed it to herself, sealed, dated, witnessed. Inside was another copy of the revised will, intact, along with a cover letter from an attorney I'd never heard of, until now. Harlan. I felt like the room swayed. "He helped file it," Wallace said. "He told her it would be safe." "He still works for Sienna," I replied. "He's in her inner circle." Wallace looked like the wind had left him. "I thought maybe someone else had destroyed it. But this..." He stopped. "This is betrayal." I opened the document again, this time reading every line. Harlan's signature was there, witnessed, countersigned, and dated before the gala. The rest of the day passed like I was underwater. I couldn't decide if I felt vindicated or doomed. By evening, I sat back down with the phone. A new notification had popped up without warning. No sound, just blinking quietly. "For her, when the time comes." It didn't feel like victory. It felt like holding a match too long, light, heat, and pain all at once. The file was just labeled Delivery Final, tucked in a hidden folder on the flip phone. I hesitated before tapping it. Then I heard her, Mom. Clear, direct. her breath shallow, but her voice sure. "If you're hearing this," she said, "then they tried to make you disappear. But you're still here, and that means I was right to trust you." I uploaded the file to the same folder Frances had used before. This time, I didn't redact anything. Names, dates, Harlan's voice, the full reading of the will, the final clause. Frances posted it as an update with just one sentence. This was never about inheritance. It was about erasure. Within hours, the post exploded. The hashtag #, Clause 17C, began trending again. But this time, it wasn't just legal forms. Local news, then national, commentators, podcasts, even the estate law professor Mom once quoted was tweeting about it. The next day, I received a formal email from a law firm I didn't recognize, referencing Harlan. It was clipped, defensive, and ended with a request. No further publication. "We're reviewing our position." I read it twice, then closed the email without replying. That night, I walked down to the Candlelight Cafe. They'd put up a small photo of Mom on the bulletin board, smiling in the vineyard, a cup of tea in hand. The owner handed me her favorite scone without asking. As I stepped outside, Leon was standing across the street again. This time, he crossed. "She'd be proud," he said, voice quiet. I didn't answer at first. We just stood there, two people who'd been part of something quiet and honest. Then I asked, "Did you know she planned all of this?" He gave the faintest nod. She always had a way of making noise without raising her voice. A second email arrived just as I got home. This one from Sienna's assistant. "Ms. Quinn would like to request a private meeting. No cameras, just the two of you." Some endings don't come with grand gestures or courtroom applause. They come in whispered recordings, a stranger's nod across the street, or the quiet return of your own name after years of being left out. I never wanted to be famous, just remembered. And somehow, through all the silence, I found my voice waiting for me. Kindness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply refuses to leave. And when we stop measuring others by what they wear, who they know, or what title they carry, we make room for the kind of truth that lasts. If this story reached a quiet corner of your heart and helped ease even a little of the weight, consider subscribing so I can keep listening, and you'll always have a soft place to return to.